It was a Tuesday morning in November, and Chicago was doing what Chicago does best in the fall, punishing everyone who forgot their coat. The wind came off Lake Michigan like it had a personal grudge, cutting through jackets, slipping under scarves, making people walk faster just to feel something warm. Emma Clark was 23 years old, running 6 minutes late to her shift at Rosewood Diner and completely broke. Not "I'll figure it out" broke, not "I'll skip Starbucks this week" broke. The real kind, the kind where you count quarters before you go to sleep. She had $47 in her account, rent due in 9 days, and a student loan reminder sitting unread in her email, because she simply couldn't bring herself to open it. She walked fast, head down, coffee thermos in hand, the one she refilled at home because she couldn't afford to buy it anywhere anymore. That's when she saw him. He was sitting against the brick wall of a closed laundromat, tucked between two overflowing trash bags, like the city had simply forgotten him there. Old, maybe 60, maybe older. It was hard to tell because hardship adds years to a face, the way weather adds years to wood. His jacket was thin, the wrong kind for November. His shoes had a hole near the left toe. In front of him was a small cardboard sign that said, simply, "Hungry." Anything helps. God bless. Emma almost walked past him. She was already late. She had $47. She had problems of her own. But she stopped. She didn't know why exactly. Maybe it was the way he wasn't asking anyone. He wasn't making eye contact, wasn't calling out, wasn't performing desperation for sympathy. He was just sitting there, quietly existing in the cold, as if he had already made peace with being invisible. She reached into her bag and pulled out the sandwich she had packed for herself. Turkey on wheat, the only thing she'd eaten so far that day. She walked over and crouched down so she was at his level. "Hey," she said softly. "Are you hungry?" He looked up slowly, like he wasn't sure the words were meant for him. "I've got this," she said, holding out the sandwich. "I work at a diner a block from here. I can grab something there." He stared at her for a moment. Not suspicious, not grateful yet, just searching her face, the way people do when they've been disappointed so many times they check for sincerity before they let themselves feel anything. Then he took it. "Thank you," he said. His voice was quiet and steady, the voice of a man who had once been something somewhere. "It's cold out here," Emma said. She reached into her thermos bag and pulled out the small hand warmers she'd tossed in last, weak and forgotten about. She pressed them into his palm. "You have a good day, okay?" she said. She stood up, adjusted her bag, and walked the rest of the way to work. She never got his name. She didn't think about it much after that. Life moved fast when you were barely keeping up with it. The next 3 years were a slow climb out of a hole Emma hadn't fully realized she was in. She picked up extra shifts. She took a night class in business administration at a community college, paying semester by semester, because a loan felt like a trap she couldn't afford to spring. She got a small promotion at the diner, shift supervisor, and then, finally, she applied for an entry-level coordinator position at a mid-size event management company called Meridian Group. She almost didn't apply. The job posting asked for a bachelor's degree, and she had an associate's. But her manager at the diner, a woman named Patricia who had seen something in Emma from day one, told her to send it anyway. "The worst they say is no," Patricia said. "And you've already heard that word 100 times. It didn't kill you yet." She got the job. Meridian Group wasn't glamorous. It was long hours, demanding clients, and a team that moved fast. But Emma was made for fast. She was organized in the way that only people who've had to manage chaos on a budget understand: creative, resourceful, and calm under pressure. Within a year, she was promoted to senior coordinator. Within 2, she was managing full event portfolios. She was 28 years old, and for the first time in her adult life, she felt stable. Not rich, not arrived, but stable. Like the ground under her feet was finally solid. That was the year Meridian Group was acquired. The announcement came on a Wednesday morning via company-wide email. The kind of corporate language that says everything and nothing at once. Exciting new chapter. Shared vision. Stronger together. The kind of words that made experienced employees nervous and junior employees confused. Within 2 weeks, they knew the new parent company was called Vertex Solutions, a privately held firm out of Boston with a reputation for aggressive growth and no tolerance for redundancy. Half the office spent those 2 weeks quietly updating their resumes. Emma updated hers too, but she stayed. The new CEO was scheduled to visit the Chicago office on a Thursday in March. There, was a quiet anxiety in the building that morning. People dressed sharper. The coffee machine was cleaned. Someone put fresh flowers at the reception desk. Emma was at her desk reviewing vendor contracts when she heard the elevator open and the sound of footsteps moving through the office, with the quiet confidence of someone who owned the room without needing to announce it. She didn't look up right away. Then her manager knocked on her open door. "Emma, the CEO wants to meet the senior team. Conference room B." She gathered her folder, walked down the hall, and pushed open the conference room door. He was standing at the head of the table, his back to her, looking out the window at the city below. He was tall, well-dressed, a dark navy suit, silver at his temples. When he turned around, Emma felt something shift in her chest. Not recognition exactly, something quieter, a door in her memory cracking open. His face was fuller now, warmer. He carried himself like a man who had walked through fire and come out the other side with something to show for it. But the eyes were the same, steady, searching, careful. He looked at her the moment she walked in, and she watched something move across his face. Not surprise, more like arrival, like he had been waiting for this moment and was only now letting himself believe it had come. "I know you," he said. The room was quiet. Everyone looked at Emma. She studied his face, pulling at the thread of memory. November, Chicago, a brick wall, a cardboard sign. "The sandwich," she said quietly. He nodded. "The sandwich." His name was Daniel Holt. 5 years ago, he had been at the lowest point of a collapse that had taken everything. A failed business, a divorce, a drinking problem he'd spent years pretending wasn't one. He had burned through savings, burned through relationships, burned through every safety net he'd ever built. The morning Emma found him outside that laundromat, he had been sitting there for 2 hours trying to decide if he had any reason left to get up. He told her this later, not in the conference room, but over coffee at a quiet place down the street after the formal introductions in the office. Tour and the polite corporate conversation had all been completed. "That morning," he said, wrapping both hands around his mug, "I wasn't just hungry. I had decided something about myself, about whether I was worth anything anymore." He paused, and then this girl crouches down and looks me in the eye like I'm a person. Not a problem, not a charity case, a person. Emma didn't say anything. She just listened. "I don't know if you understand what that does to someone," he said. "When you've been invisible for long enough and someone just sees you." He shook his head. "I got up that afternoon. I called my brother. That was the first call I'd made in 4 months. He had gotten sober. He had started over slowly, painfully, the way real starting over actually works. Not in a montage, not in a straight line, but in small daily decisions that didn't feel like progress until one day, years later, you looked back and realized how far you'd come. He had rebuilt a consulting firm from a spare bedroom. It had grown. Eventually, it had grown enough to acquire companies like Meridian. Emma listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finished, she looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't give you that sandwich to change your life," she said. "I gave it to you because it was cold and you were hungry." "I know," he said. "That's exactly why it worked." Over the following months, Emma watched Daniel lead with the kind of clarity that comes from someone who has lost everything and chosen to rebuild with intention. He was demanding but fair. He valued people who worked hard and thought for themselves. He hated pretense. He promoted Emma to director of operations for the Chicago division 6 months after the acquisition, not because of the sandwich. He was careful about that, transparent about the process. There was a formal review, other candidates, a committee. Emma earned it the way she had earned everything in her life, by being exactly as capable as she had always been, in a room that finally had the right person watching. But on the day she got the call, after she hung up the phone and sat alone in her apartment with her heart pounding, she thought about 23-year-old Emma walking to work in the cold, already late, already broke, almost not stopping, almost. She thought about how the smallest moments carry the heaviest weight, how decency offered freely with no expectation of return has a way of moving through the world long after you've forgotten you gave it, how the life you're building is made not just of your ambitions and your plans, but of the 1,000 tiny choices you make when no one is watching and nothing is at stake and you're already running late. She sat in that quiet apartment, director title barely an hour old, and she cried, not from sadness, not entirely from joy either, but from the overwhelming, recognition that her life had been shaped by a moment she almost skipped. She was glad she hadn't. She was so glad she hadn't.